All right. So that's fun, right? So, you know, we're going to go through kind of all the paperwork that you need to write up a listing agreement, right? Is anyone excited about working on the listing side, or is everyone just wanting to work on the buyer side, or wanting to do both? I mean, any opinions or thoughts on that?
I want listings.
Okay,
I'm fine with both.
good, good. Denise, you just sold your house. I'm sure you're hoping to be on that side as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely looking forward to that.
Maria, have you thought about that? Whether you want to be, on the buyer side or seller side, or the listing side, or
At this point, I'm open to anything. I'm just open to learning. So,
gotcha. Okay, good, good. Yes, I mean, obviously, as a successful agent, you're going to do both sides. A lot of people tend to gravitate towards one or the other. For me, I heavily on the listing side. I just enjoy that side of the business. So it's a little bit different from the buyer side, but that's just my preference. So we're going to kind of go through the different stuff that it takes. So if you're going to write up a listing, and Tony can probably answer this really quickly, but what do you need, right? So when you meet with a buyer, right? You need a buyer agency agreement. Disclosure form letting them know that you're a real estate agent. On the listing side, what are some things that you need paperwork wise to sign a listing?
Well, I feel like you need to go.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. And just go to the MLS, and I would probably look at the past sales. I would look at all their deed information, see what loans they have, see what the lot looks like. And then, prepare the listing agreement before I go.
Yep. That's definitely what I like to do, is have all that stuff ready before I go out there. What are some of the different documents that you need though? Say again. Somebody had a little echo. So what are the different documents that we need for the listing agreement, right? Obviously, we need the listing exclusive listing agency agreement, right? What else would you need with a listing? There's a few other things,
The P roads and the MOG.
right? So the property disclosures,
The
right?
2T, well, you'll end up receiving the 2T. The professional disclosures.
Professional disclosures, oil, mineral, gas. Depending on what year the house is, you might need lead paint, right?
Mhm.
And Brittany, what year is that?
1978.
That's right. That's all that's all stuck in our heads. 1978. If it's that or older, make sure you're getting a lead paint disclosure signed. And same thing when you're writing up an offer, right? So if you're writing up an offer and it's an older house, make sure that you're having your clients sign that when you're sending over the offer. So yeah, so that's some of the stuff that we're gonna go over today, is that the different paperwork, the agency disclosure, the MLS listing forms, the seller disclosures, counter offers, multiple offers. We'll get into all that stuff. So we're not this is what we're not going to do today, is go through all 17 pages of the listing agreement, right? Because it's a lot, right? So that's something that everybody should do and know that backwards and frontwards, right? So when it comes down to you actually meeting with the client, right, and you actually asking them to sign your listing agreement, it's not the first time that you've read it, right? That is a bad time to learn the paperwork, is when you're in front of somebody, right? So read it very thoroughly. If you have any questions, ask, right? Ask your mentor, ask me. Let's make sure that you're very comfortable with it. So when you're explaining it to someone for the first time, you're very comfortable. And what I found when I first started is I would pitch my wife, right? Like, all right, here's the paperwork. I'm gonna walk you through signing it. This is page 1. This says that I'm a realtor. This says this, and this. This is a lead paint, and you have no lead in, right? So I walked through the whole thing. I made her sign it, right? So practice with that. Get used to that, right? So that's something that you need to be very comfortable with, because you don't want to be fumbling around when you're in front of a client, right? They need to know that you're confident and that you understand the paperwork. So we're gonna let's just look at the listing agreement. So here she is. She is a lot of pages. Let's see, 13 pages here. I was looking at the offer to purchase this morning at 17 pages, but so the listing agreement, right? So everyone has access to SkySlope. Maria, have you done onboarding yet? You have access to that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, good. So maybe a good homework assignment for this week is for everyone to go into SkySlope, create a client, right? Create someone that's gonna be selling their house, 123 Main Street. Use your own house, right? Use your own address if you own a house. And
Brian.
let's create a
Can I-
listing agreement at some point.
Hey, can I bring up some of the forms in SkySlope are outdated?
Are they?
Yes.
They should update automatically, but I'll
Okay.
have. Let me. I'll look into that.
Okay. Gotcha.
They should update as they go. Like this one was revised. Like I just downloaded this one. This one was revised on 7/2023.
Okay. Got it.
But they should be up to date. So yeah, if they're not, usually if you're in there that they're not, when you go to do it, they'll say there's a newer version. Do you want to upgrade to that? And usually you can click on that and it'll let you do it. But I'll look into that. So this is the listing agreement. To have an actual contract, what's one thing that you have to have? You have to have a start date and an end date, right? So, you know, a common mistake is to not put an end date on here, right? So this box right here, you guys can see this. This contract starts when this is signed, right? The agreement that this is signed by the client and yourself, right? Because you sign it and they sign it, right? And then at the end right here, you need to have an expiration date. Maria, what's the correct expiration date from today? So today is October 30th. What am I supposed to put here for the expiration date of this listing?
Sorry. Today's October what? So I don't know, a month, 6 months. I don't know.
Okay, Brittany?
I would say the date that you and your client agree on. So if y'all have a listing contract for 3 months, then you would put 3 months from today.
Right. So yeah, so I mean there's no actual like set date, right? I typically almost always shoot for a 6-month listing agreement, right? That's kind of my go-to, right? So if it almost always and like Catherine mentioned before, like I usually have all this stuff filled out ahead of time. And if it's October, I've got May on here or March, whatever 6 months from now is, but I've got that date on there. So April 30th, 2024 is the end date, right? So six months from now is usually when I go. Now you're going to have times when people say, I don't want to do 6 months. I'll do 3 months, right? And there's times where that's going to be the case. Doing a 1-month contract is super short, right? I mean, that contract's going to lapse while you're under contract, right? Even best case scenario, even if you put it on the market week 1, it gets an offer 1 week later, you know, the average close time is 30, 35 days. So you're putting yourself in a situation where you're typically going to be out of contract pretty quickly. So again, ideally, I like to go 6 months. And, you know, if it's a vacant lot, sometimes I'll go a year, right? If it's a commercial property, sometimes I'm going to go a year, right? Depending on the property. But an average house, typically you're going to go 3 to 6 months is a normal, right? But the more time you give yourself, the better, right? And you know, I've got a listing that I just signed last week. We put on the market and she had an emergency come up and we had to take it off the market, right? It's a house that should sell very quickly, right? So do I need 6 months on that house? Probably not. But guess what happened? She had a family emergency and we just took it off the market, right? So thankfully I did that because if it's off the market for 1 or 2 months, by the time we go back on and get offers, get under contract and close, I'm still within that area, right? So there's a reason why 6 months is ideal because things happen, right? You might go under contract and that escrow falls out, right? So, and you can always do an extension, of course, but that's gonna always, but yeah, ideally that's again, like Brittany says, perfect way she said is what you and your client agree on, right? But usually 3 to 6 months is pretty normal, right? So your street address, this is where you guys are signing, right? So you guys are going to sign on every page of this right beside theirs, right? So when you go down, and again, I'm not going to read all this stuff to you. This is, you know, you guys are going to read all this stuff about fixtures, all that fun stuff, lease items, personal property. So on this page here, hope I not picked on. All right, Denise, unmute. All right, so what are we supposed to put right here? seller agrees to pay firm a total of blank percentage. What is the correct number there?
It's whatever you agree with, well, whatever you want to charge, basically. If you don't put, 6% or, 6%, 5%, that is totally up to you.
Gotcha. Okay, good. Yeah, so again, like they both answered very correctly. It's what you and your client agree upon, right? I typically shoot for 6. That's my goal on when I take a listing, is to get a full 6%. And out of that 6%, right? I mean, you're explaining that's split between the listing agent and the buyer's agent, right? So, typically if it's 6%, then you guys can do 3 and 3. If it's 5%, that number's gonna go down to be 2.5, 2.5, right? So that number goes right here. And this is the listing price, right? So this is the percentage where you're gonna put the commission. And this is the listing price. So again, it's gonna be kind of the same answer, but the listing price, right? Who's coming up with that, and where does that number come from?
You would be providing that with your market analysis.
Yeah, so we're gonna do a CMA. We're gonna go out there and, before you go out there, you're gonna put your numbers together and say, I go out there and I think the house is worth 250, and that's gonna be maybe where my comps run me to. But maybe I get out there and she's added on a screen porch, right? Or she's got 2 buildings in the back that have electrical and it's added value, or she just put a new roof on and did a bunch of upgrades, right? So you're gonna go out there with typically a range, right? So maybe you're saying 255 to 275, and depending on the condition of that house when you get out there is where you'll lead them to, right? At the end of the day, it's the seller's decision, right? They have to agree with you, right? But you want to get them within a number that's going to get the attention and the offers and the showings that you want quickly, right? Because you don't want the house sitting on the market, right? So there'll be another rev up where we do comps. We run through comps and come up with a price per square foot, what we think the house is worth. We're not going to go through that today, but that is something that you're going to do before you go out to the house, right? Is run your comps. And we'll pull up a property that I went to last week and kind of show you what I brought out to the house, my notes, my comps, and the paperwork. So I'm going to show you guys all that here in just a minute so you can kind of see it. We're just going to run through this really quick. So this spot right here is if the house doesn't sell within X amount of days, so the house expires, right? So let's just say we did 3 months, and at 90 days, it's going to automatically be expired in the MLS. And let's say 2 weeks later, somebody that showed the house when you were under contract ends up buying that house, right? This protects you guys if that happens, right? So usually 30, 60, 90 days is pretty standard to put here. I usually put 90 to kind of protect myself, and in case I don't sell within my contract, that if one of those buyers is one of the people that buys it, like I'm still getting that commission, unless they sign with another agent in that period. So it's a little caveat. So this page, this is where you're going to show how much the buyer's agent gets paid, right? So buyer's agent is this box, sub agent is this box. Maria, you just passed your exam, right? What is the difference in a sub agent and buyer agent?
The sub agents are all the agents that are helping the buyer agent, and everybody that's working the transaction.
Gotcha. Anyone else? That's good. Anyone else want to chime in on that? Sub agent or buyer agent?
I really don't know how Realty One does it. Do we do? Lots of companies don't even want to do the sub agent thing, but if they don't have a buyer's agency agreement, then they're automatically a sub agent.
Yeah, I mean, sub agent can mean to me. It can mean a lot of different things. I normally check both these boxes, and I normally put what commission I'm giving the buyer's agent to both of these. So I have both of these filled out. So for example, say it's 5%, I'm gonna put 2.5 here and 2.5 here, right? And it's gonna be either or, right? It's not gonna be all three, right? So it's either gonna be this box or this box. Yeah, so sub-agency can also be, maybe you're dealing with a Oakwood Homes, it's a new home builder, right? And you go with, go in there and they've got five agents there working, right? They're not a specific agent for that buyer that comes in there, right? They represent the company, right? So they typically, at the end of the day, kind of have the company's best interest, not necessarily the buyers, but they are representing the buyer. So it's kind of a weird thing. But at the end of the day, you want to at least have this one checked and the percentage of it there. Just to cover myself, I normally check both of these boxes and put the same number here and here. That makes sense. Again, you guys want to read all this. It just kind of describes what the duties of our firm are. We're going to list the house. We're going to do our best to sell it. We're going to disclose all the material facts. Read this, and we're not going to discriminate. This is relatively new in the last year, this section. This is the marketing date, the coming soon. You want to have all this stuff checked if possible, right? Can we put a yard sign in the driveway, right? Yes. Can we do an open house? Yes. Can we advertise on the internet? You definitely want to have that checked. You definitely want to have that checked. So ideally you want to have all these. Maybe you don't have coming soon because we're not going to do it coming soon. But if you can, it always helps, right? Like if you got a property going live on Friday, why not do coming soon on Monday or Tuesday? Put up 2 teaser pictures and build some interest. So when you do go live on Friday, you get a bunch of showings, right? Or sometimes you'll get, especially during COVID, you're getting offers during that coming soon, right? Brittany, if I'm in coming soon and I've got somebody that really loves the house, can I show them the house?
Not until it's listed, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, so it is that the coming soon period is very specific that you cannot have anyone in that house during that period, right? So just make sure. You'll have agents like, hey, can you sneak me in? Like, we want to, don't do it. Do not do it. Be very cautious. So, but again, you're gonna have some people that don't want a yard sign. There's a lot of people that don't want signs, right? Maybe they don't want their nosy neighbors knowing their business. Maybe it's they've already moved and it's a nice house and they don't want strangers knowing the house is vacant, right? There's different reasons that people don't want yard signs, right? If they don't want it, don't click it. But ideally you click most of those, right?
Can you put all the pictures under coming soon? Can you go ahead and do that, or do you have to wait until it goes live to add all the pictures?
You can. I usually just put a couple until it, and then go that way. When it goes live, it looks a little bit different. It's got newer stuff in there, but yeah, you can do it either way.
You could. Okay.
Lockbox. The seller does or does not authorize the firm to put a lockbox on. Denise, where are you getting the lockbox from?
The Sopra box, is that, or
Okay, yeah.
we can get a Sopra box, or you can get a combination lock that you
Yep.
provide yourself.
Yeah, so you guys have the option of going through Canopy and getting the super boxes, the big gray boxes that have the Bluetooth set up, and that's how you guys use the app on your phone to unlock it when you're there. If not, you guys can go to Lowe's. My wife works at Lowe's, so I represent Lowe's. I won't say Home Depot, but you can go to Lowe's and get a combination box that goes on the door, right? So you guys provide the boxes and put the boxes on, and you and the client decide, hey, I want it on the front door, or maybe I want it in the carport, or maybe lock it on that tree out front, right? There's, wherever's best for them, right? Why would somebody not want a lockbox?
Well, they can decide that they don't want people coming through the house without their selling agent coming with them. That might be an option. They might want their selling agent to be at every showing, so that will prevent somebody, to just come in and, show the house with them.
Yep. So so that's not super common on luxury stuff for sure. Like, there's a lot of times on luxury stuff that, yeah, they want their listing agent there at every showing, and they don't want anyone else having access to that house, right? So that's definitely one. What about maybe somebody that has 2 pit bulls, right? And they don't want a lockbox just on the off chance that some agent schedules a showing in 5 minutes, and even though they don't have an approval, they decide to go to the house, right? And somehow it got approved, right? Like there's different reasons that people might not want a lockbox. Discuss that when you're there. Like, hey, are you okay if I put a lockbox on the front door? Like, are you normally gone during the day? Like, what's your work schedule like? When's the best time I can show this house, right? And ideally, they are very, very flexible. I've got a client right now that is turning down showings left and right, and it has been a nightmare, right? They're just, all right, we have a showing tomorrow at 10. Can you do 10:45? I'm watching The Price is Right. Like, no, like we're accepting right? Because these people have schedules, right? Like ideally you want your clients to know that we should accept, unless there's an emergency, we should accept every showing that we can, right? Trying to change it an hour here, hour there is it's a lot more work for you guys, but it's frustrating as a buyer's agent who's like trying to schedule their day and schedule 10 showings, and this one keeps changing times, right? So but again, the lockbox thing, ideally you have a lockbox, that way you don't have to be there, like Denny said. But you also ideally have one so it can be shown at any time, right? So if the house is vacant, you can schedule in showing time to do automatic approval, meaning that if somebody, as a buyer's agent, right? So Maria has her buyer, and she wants to go see 123 Main Street today at 4:00. She schedules a showing and she'll get an automatic, you're approved, right? Meaning she gets a lockbox code right away, and that is approved, right? If
What's
it
a
is,
typical showing window, Brian? I just tried to show some properties because we were looking for something for my son, and I did 30 minutes. 30 minutes, an hour, because I mean, you got to be there at the right time. So you got to overlap them some,
yeah, 15, 30 minutes is pretty normal, depending on if it's a big property that's got a big outside, maybe you do 45 minutes or an hour. And sometimes agents will limit that. They won't allow anything over 30 minutes. So it really just depends on the agent. I normally don't limit that just in case someone needs a longer time, but I also don't want somebody there for 2 hours, cooking breakfast and, hanging out all day. But yeah, it kind of depends on the house and how big the house is. But
30
having 30 minutes is pretty normal.
hour max. Okay.
So again, when you guys have a listing, you guys are going to want to make sure if it's, occupied, whether it's the owner occupied or tenant occupied, that you don't automatically approve it, because then people would just be showing up, right? So you're going to get a call and text saying, hey, Rebecca with Remax wants to show your property today at 4 p.m. You're going to reach out to your client. Hey, at 4:00, we have a showing, and just, confirm yes or no. And then once they confirm, then you accept it. And then you're covered, your client knows. So that's the way that I do it. You can actually have it go straight to your seller, where they actually get the same text as well, and they can confirm or deny themselves as well, right? So just depending on the relationship you have with your client, that's an option as well.
How does it work if they do it? Does that usually go okay, or just, you never know? Just depends, I guess.
It just depends. I mean, some people want to be super involved. I like to do it where I have the control of it, because it gives me a reason to contact him a lot, right? Versus
Okay,
where if they
okay.
can control all the showings, then maybe I don't have as many reasons to reach out to them. But yeah, everyone does it a little bit differently. And
Okay.
then there's times they want to know everything. They want to know the agent and all that stuff. If that's the case, then it's coming to you too. You can see all that, right? So you have
Okay.
full access to it.
Okay.
Our firm does not maintain earnest monies. Let's click does not here. Has owned the property for at least 1 year or not. Does not own the property yet. Are they under bankruptcy? So, typically this is going to be no. Typically this is going to be yes, they've owned it for at least 1 year. But hey, since COVID, people are buying houses and selling houses left and right. I've got a house I just got an offer on last night that they bought the house in May, and they're selling it now, right? So in that case, it's clicked right here, and that goes in the MLS. You also read through all this stuff. There's a signature at the end where they sign, and then you sign down here as the agent, and it's pretty simple. It's 13 pages, so it is a lot to go through. When you guys are in SkySlope, you're gonna enter their basic information. They're Rebecca and Steve Smith. It'll automatically auto-populate here, and all the stuff that you put in will auto-populate throughout, right? So and you guys are just going through and clicking the little stuff. But again, this is super important that you click this or this, but have this click, so that's the start date, and that you have a date here, so it's an end date. Because if something ever happens and they're not happy, right? If an attorney looks at this and one of those isn't filled, it's not a valid contract, because there's not a start and end date, right? So just little things like that.
Sorry, is this a North Carolina exclusive
This is
form? or
North Carolina, yes, yes.
Okay. Is there what's the main difference between the North Carolina and the South Carolina one? I don't know if we're gonna go through that one as well, but
No, I'll send you that one as well. The South Carolina is fairly similar. It's not a ton different, but I'll send that to you as well, and we can go through that. The lead-based paint, again, house is older than 1978. So your seller is going to initial here and initial here. And then ideally they click this one right here. Seller has no knowledge of lead-based paint. And they click the bottom one here too, right? So ideally both of the bottom ones are clicked, right? And then the buyer's agent will have their client sign these three. So you guys also sign this one. So your seller signs it right here, initials it here, and then you initial it here. And then they sign, and you also sign down here. So that's the lead-based paint. Again, that's only on houses that are older than 1978. Let's see. Working with real estate agents for sellers, right? So there's a working with real estate agents disclosure for buyers, right? This is the one for sellers. So you're going to have this signed as well. So I click, sales agency, dual agency, designated dual agency, working with unrepresented buyer, and then they sign it. So you don't sign this, just the client sign this, but you should have this, same thing as a buyer as well, like letting people know, like usually your first full conversation, having them sign this, right? That you're a realtor, right? So you should be getting this signed quite a bit. Oil, mineral, gas. Why in the world do we have to fill this out? Where'd it go? So if you guys write up an offer, you guys will see that this is in there as well, right? In the disclosure, something that you guys need to have your buyer sign. On the listing side, this is something that you have your seller sign, right? So have the oil, mineral rights been severed from the property? Basically, this means that the oil, mineral, and gas all comes with the property, right? So ideally, it's no all the way down here, right? That's, unless they know something has been, some of the rights have been severed for some reason, it's typically going to be no all the way down here. If it's yes, if you see something that's yes all the way down, call the listing agent. Usually they messed up. They just usually made a mistake. But if there's a reason that it's yes, and that's you need to know. But usually it's going to be either no representation or no's all the way down in this one. And then on the buying side, your buyers will initial all 6 of these. So it looks crazy because there's if there's 2 of them, there's 12 initials in this tiny little space. But but on the buyer side, that you do have to initial all those pages and then sign down here.
Okay, so let's say the sellers doesn't know they've been severed. On the deed, does it say there that they've been severed if they have been? If you went to check
Not
for your,
necessarily. I mean, typically they will know from when they bought the house, but if they don't know, then if they don't know and they don't feel comfortable, then just the 2 that say no representation.
okay,
You
But
put
they
no
should-
representation, but then these other 4 you'll just put no, right? Because if they severed it themselves, they would know, right? So
Right.
they should be able to put yes or no on these 4 at least,
Okay.
if not all 6. But that is common, to your point, to see these 2 checked and then these other 4 checked no.
Okay.
So, but again, this is a form that you want to read over. So it shouldn't be a form like when you guys are meeting with a client and getting them to sign all the paperwork. This should be a very quick form, right? Like as far as the oil, mineral, gas comes with property, right? Yes, sign, right? So read it over in detail so you know it, but you want to make sure that you get all the documents signed, but you also don't want it going through it for an hour and a half, right? And losing a potential client over because the paperwork's taking so long, right? So know your stuff before you go out there will be super helpful. The residential property disclosure. So this is an important one to have done, right? So this is argue besides the listing agreement, the main document, if not more, right? So this is the document that's going to say that they're disclosing that they know if there's anything wrong with the house, right? So you're going to obviously want to go through and read all of this so you know when you get out there. But overall, it's pretty simple, right? Yes, there's something wrong with the house, right? So there's the dwelling's exterior walls, or is there a leakage in the roof? Yes, right. So that's where you're clicking here. In an ideal world, you have no's all the way down, right? Meaning, no, as far as I know, there's nothing wrong with the house, right? And that's ideally that's the case. If they don't know, and why might somebody not know? Maria, what would be an example of somebody that doesn't know something?
What would be an example of something they don't know? How old the roof is, if they just bought the property a few years ago, or the furnace, the age of it, stuff like that.
Yes, I mean, there's times they might not know the age of things, but there's also times that you're going to put no representation on stuff because what if they've had a tenant in the house the last 5 years, right? They don't know the condition of the house because they haven't been in the house, right? Maybe they just inherited the house from their parents because they just passed away, right? So they don't know the condition of the house, right? So there's times where you're not going to have representation, and technically your clients can put no representation all the way down if they want to. Again, if they're disclosing stuff to you, they need to be disclosing it on here. If there's stuff that's yes, there's a box down here where you fill out why it's a yes, like what's wrong with it, right? But no, if there's nothing wrong with the house that they know of, then you're clicking no on this page all the way down, and you guys can just kind of go through. They should be the one filling this out and clicking it, and you just kind of guiding them to what they need to be doing. So out of all the documents, this one takes the longest, right? Where the listing agreement, by the time I get to that, the oil, mineral gas, the lead paint, the working with real estate agents, I can have the 4 of those signed in 2 seconds, 2 minutes at tops. This one takes a few minutes, right? Because you want to make sure that they're filling this out, because if something happens, during the process or after the process, this is normally what's looked at, right? So yeah, go through this stuff. They should know most of this stuff, right? What kind of heat do they have? Central air is there water on city water, or is it on a well? They should know all the stuff. You should know. You'll actually know a lot of that going out there as well, right? So this just wasn't in my way right here. Let's go here. Let's see. So for example, this is a listing appointment that I had last week, right? So house in Cherryville, it's an older house. So all 5 of the documents we just talked about, the listing agreement, property disclosure, oil, mineral gas, working with real estate agents, and lead-based paint, right? So all 5 of these needed to be filled out and signed, right? So I knew some of that information just because I went to the property details, right? Does everyone know how to find the property details? So if you go to real estate tax, and let's just type in, it's going to pop up. If you haven't used real estate tax, this is genuinely your best friend. I mean, you guys should be using this a ton on your buyer side, sell side, whatever. Just when you're doing comps research, this is such a good tool. If you ever put in the address and there's no matches down here, usually what it is you don't have that county selected, right? And you can only select up to 12 counties at a time, right? So I've got the 12 that I use basically the most, but if there's something in a different county and it's not pulling it up, it's because it's not in there typically. So just a heads up, right? So you can search by address. You can also search by name. it's always last name first, right? So if you just start typing in Rebecca, you're not gonna get anything, right? So there's gonna be times where maybe you just know the name and you don't know the address, or vice versa, right? So even if you have a buyer, a potential buyer lead, and they just, they're coming in, they say that they're interested in a house, put their name in here and see if they own a house, right? You can reverse search it and see, oh, maybe they actually own 2 houses, right? So it's a great tool. So I've got one match. I'm gonna search it. Dun, 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 dun. It pulls up their information, right? So is this always accurate? Not always, but it's a very good baseline. It normally is fairly accurate, but it's a good baseline for the property, right? So this says it's 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It was last purchased in 2004 for $59,000. It's 1,900 square foot, and it was built in 1960. It's 2,100 square foot lot, so it's roughly a little over half an acre. This is a big thing I'm looking for, right? Who does it have as the owner, right? Because a lot of times you might be talking with a client and you schedule appointment for a listing appointment, and you're just talking to Rebecca, for example. But when you pull this up, it says Rebecca Shepherd and Steve Shepherd, right? So now you know there's 2 people, right? Sometimes this will say Billy Bob's LLC, right? So now you know it was bought under a corporation, right? So know that when you're going out there, because this is what's on here is typically what's going to go on the listing agreement as the names, if that makes sense. So this is going to give you a lot of good information. This is going to give you the neighborhood. This is going to give you, what county it is. It's going to give you almost all the details, right? So it's 0.49 acres. So you need to know that. It's forced air. It's brick veneer on the outside. This is all stuff that you're going to need when you get the listing and put it in the MLS as well. So this is all like great information that you should have this when you go to the listing appointment, right? You should 100% of the time that you go to a listing appointment, you should have this with you, right? Another cool tool, and this one isn't very accurate, but it kind of gives you, like Zillow does its estimate. This also gives you kind of this is what we think the house is worth, right? And in this case, this one isn't accurate because they actually have another 1,000 square footage and an extra bedroom and bathroom on top of it.
Wow.
So yeah, good for them. They haven't been paying taxes on that, right? So so a lot of times this is accurate, but it isn't always, right?
But was that permitted space? Did they permit it? Did they get a CO on that additional space they added?
It is permitted. Maybe just what hasn't been added since she's done it, but it's not in here at the time. But that's one of those things, like maybe I went out here saying that this house is only worth 200,000, but then I get out there and it's worth closer to 300 because of all this. So there's just times where you have to make changes on the fly, right? Because this house hasn't been sold since 2004. There's nothing else online about it, right? So I wouldn't know that she's completely finished the basement and added all this stuff to it, right? So there are times where you guys just have to, be ready to change things, right? So just know that in advance.
Did you ask for the CO? Did you ask for the CO for it? Like, do you ask for any of that as a listing agent?
I just asked if they have it permitted and if it was done, and she said yes, and that was.
And she doesn't have to provide it though?
If a buyer asks for it, I would ask her to provide it, and then if the attorney asks, but they can check the records.
Okay, you can find it somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this one's a super simple lot, but you guys will notice when you guys start going out these properties, this is a nice little rectangle, but they're the craziest shapes ever. I wish this was a better example, but they're always the craziest shapes ever, right? So when you're walking the property, they're like, you won't believe my lot. It actually goes over here. I'm like, yeah, I was looking at it before I came out there. And you show them this on your tablet or your computer while you're walking around, like, oh wow, right? You're gonna look like such an expert because you already knew where the property lines are to an extent, right? So this is a great tool, right? So you're gonna bring this out, you're gonna bring your comps out, you're gonna have all your notes about the person that you talked about, and then you're gonna have all your paperwork ready to go, right? Filled out with your information and things like that. So when you get out there, you guys can start that process. So that's kind of the way that I do things. Let's see.
So that's an older house and she finished the basement. Does the ceiling height have to be a certain amount to count it as square footage? Or do you just send the appraiser out to figure out how much square footage you're going to market it as?
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be over 7 foot. 7 foot or above.
Okay.
And there has to be a window in the bedroom or like 2 exits for a basement. So there's certain things that had to be done. But so these were actually the comps. And again, we're not doing comps today, but these are the comps that I brought out there. For example, that had recently just sold. This one just sold at 255, and it's like 800 square foot smaller. So that was a nice comp, nice done house. So this is what I'm bringing. I have it on my iPad, and I'm showing them. I'm pulling up this as we're going through comps. So we're talking about pricing and where we should price it at. And I've got the property disclosure that I just showed you guys. I've got that downloaded. I've got that on my computer, and I'm showing them that, like, hey, this is what the records have for you. This is some comps that have sold recently. So I'm showing this all to them. So when I get out there, obviously I'm the expert on why I think we should price our house at this price point. So, and then we ended up signing it at 265 or 69, I think.
Did it sell yet?
No, this is when I said I signed it last week. I put it live last week. Did pictures, Lockbox yard sign all the same time, but she had a family emergency. We actually just pulled it down. So yeah, so we listed this one at 269.9, which with the comps that I showed actually was, I think, priced almost low. So yes, we had several showings already and a bunch of other calls about it, but hopefully we'll be able to put it back on the market soon. But yeah, this is a listing I literally just had signed last week, right? So I signed and she signed on every page. So yeah, the biggest thing for you guys, I think, is to practice doing it, right? So everyone, use your home address or your friend's address, or make up an address in SkySlope, create a contact, create a listing, get all that paperwork sent out and emailed, and email to your personal email address, right? And then sign it, right? Sign it so you know how they're signing it, right? So so you can walk them through, like, hey, click this, accept this electronic signature, right? Know that process. So when you're out there and you're trying to guide them through that you're able to do that, and you've done it before. Any questions? I know it's a lot to go through. And when you guys have your first listing, you guys are gonna obviously call me or call your mentor, like, walk you through it. But was that helpful, like seeing an actual listing agreement and going through that?
I think the real list was really good. Being able to download that or pull it in or copy and paste it, or however you do it.
Right. Yeah.
And so now that took it off the market, does that accrue time on the MLS since you pulled it off the market?
So I
Does
have it in
not.
withdrawal status. So it has 2 days on the market, and then I withdrew it. And so it's not collecting days right now. And then when I put it back active, it'll
So
start
maybe when
accruing.
you go back active, can you kind of resend it out so it looks like new again? Because it kind of feels like you're losing some of the interest, right? What do you do?
It's not ideal. I'd rather not do it, but I'd also rather, it's a fine line. Like, I'd also rather not collect those days on the market. So
Right.
I did the opposite. I've got a house in Belmont, and it should have sold in the first 2 days, but we were turning down every single showing, and we couldn't show it for over 3 weeks. He didn't want to withdraw it, so now we collected those days. So a house that should have sold for 10, 20,000 over is now sitting there, right? Versus, had we withdrawn it, it might have looked better, right? So it's it just depends on your client and the situation. But ideally, I'd rather withdraw it if we can't do showings and something's going on. At least I can say, hey, like, we had to take it out the market because of this. Versus,
Right.
hey, it's been on the market for 45 days and hasn't sold. Like, why? Right.
Got it.
So, what other questions we got, Maria? This is your first one. Was this helpful? Was this good?
Yeah, it is helpful. I mean, I know I have a lot to learn yet, but I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing is, like, every week is something different, right? So next week we'll be doing something with buyers, and then last week we did something about financing, and we had a mortgage agent on. So every week it's just a kind of a different subject. So it'll be helpful for you. But at the end of the day, when, like, this specific situation arises, like, reach out to your mentor and be like, hey, like, I've got a listing appointment tomorrow afternoon. Help me get ready. What do I need to do? But having this, and these are recorded. You guys can always pull this back up on our YouTube channel and look at them that way as well to give you a reminder. But yeah.
No, and seeing the live example also helps a lot, because obviously I've seen the forms, but that's about it.
It's a different, it's a different world from seeing them, just in training and, to actually using them. So, I'd highly recommend everyone like just practicing and making a fake listing agreement and signing and getting it signed this week. I think that'd be a good chore for everyone to do. Any other questions, comments, concerns? No. All right. Well, if you guys need anything this week, reach out to me. If not, then I will see you guys next Monday.
See you next week.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Brian.
Have a good week, guys. Bye.
Bye.